We are off to a very good start on our first drafts for our Mark Twain paper. I'm really impressed so far. Wanted to share a few ideas that might help us move forward. First of all, I want to encourage almost everybody to sharpen their claim. I want to remind you, Twain isn't neutral. He's taking a position on these social issues he's presenting. He's looking at masculinity in 6th century America as a way of commenting on 19th century America, and he has strong feelings about the masculinity he's observing. Same is true of femininity. Same is true of class, technology, human agency. We're always thinking from the idea that Twain is a social critic, which he very much and self-consciously is, and Beard is his ally in that process. Second tip that I have overall that I wanted to point out to you is that you want to remember that the evidence you want to unpack as you work on your draft is the Twain's use of literary devices, that a connotation in the passage, or irony in the passage, or imagery in the passage, or metaphor, or symbolism in the passage, that's your evidence of Twain's claim, of Twain's argument. And what you have to do is not just say, this image shows us Twain is appalled by the class system in 19th century America and 6th century New England. You don't just say that the image does that. You have to explain how. What does the image represent symbolically, and how is Twain using that image to make his social criticism? The how is the key thing that you want to make sure that you talk about. Let's take a look at how I do that in the sample that I provided. This can be hard to see, so you might want to expand it full screen. But I want to point out here that the literary device that this entire paragraph really works with is paradox, right? The idea of an apparent contradiction in terms. And in many ways, that's a form of irony here. But my point is that when you take the time to really carefully unpack a literary device, 1 or 2 at most is all you're going to need, because this whole paragraph really only looks at one sort of example of a paradox, and the unpacking of that paradox or subtle inversion tells us where Twain is. Right? So I think that that's a really important element for you, is to realize that the literary device is an interpretive tool for you that you want to use to unpack the language to get at what you think Twain's argument is. So the literary devices, and making sure we're explicitly identifying them, but also explaining and interpreting them, key point. I want to encourage you to stop the plop. A lot of you are taking very large quotes from Twain or Greenblatt and throwing them into your paper. And when you do that, I think it's really important to ask yourself, do I really need all of this? Am I really going to comment on all of this? And 9 out of 10 times, the answer is no. You've put this long quote in order to really highlight 1 or 2 words that you're going to talk about. So when I talk about stopping the plop, I'm saying it's better to have short quotes integrated into your own analysis than long quotes that are distracting and confusing for the reader. And toward that end, my motto is lose it or use it. If you've got language in a quote that you're not going to explicitly and directly talk about, you should get rid of that and instead take smaller quotes out of your original passage and integrate them into your sentences interpreting things. Let me show you how that works again over in the sample that I'd given you in the instructions. So once again, you might want to expand this to full screen so you can see these small words. But what I want to point out is how I avoid long quotes here. So instead of 2 or 3 whole sentences from Twain, it's just a phrase. Again, we can see that I'm integrating, instead of a whole patch of text, just a few words that I plug into my own sentence. That allows me to keep the focus where I want the reader to be, on the words and phrases that I want. So you can see that this little paragraph uses 3 quotes, but they're all presented as short. Not one big quote plopped at the beginning or end that the reader is supposed to be able to sort of follow and refer back to, but instead gets distracted or confused by. So that's what I mean by stop the plot. And then I had just one last idea that I wanted to share with you in terms of having read all your drafts. And that was the idea that we have to always remember the key metaphor here that lurks behind the whole book is 6th century England is a metaphor for late 19th century America. And the things that Twain is saying about monarchical class structures and culture in 6th century England, he also means as a commentary on late 19th century industrial capitalism and its class system and ideology in America. If you keep that in mind, it's going to open up a lot of interpretive possibilities for you that I think some of you are missing as you make these really cool observations about passages and scenes and apply ideas from our Greenblatt, Gender, and Marx readings to your interpretations. All right, hope these ideas help. See you in Canvas.